Okay. All right, 2 Timothy, let's back up here. I want you to grab a couple of verses to start. Notice, first of all, verse 1, "This know also in the last days, perilous times shall come." The reason I bring that to your attention is to let you know that God's view of perilous times is different than our view. Our view of perilous times is economic collapse or physical calamity or something happened geographically or geologically, which, by the way, we must have missed the asteroid that was supposed to have hit by noon, Middle Eastern time or whatever it was on Sunday. Did you see it? It just whizzed right by and you never even got it. But it was supposed to hit us and it didn't, so we're still here. What a drag. But at any rate, notice this also. He says that in the last days perilous times will come. And then he describes what goes on with men, which reminds me to say this: what matters to God is not what happens to the earth.
Amen. Amen.
It matters what happens to a man's soul.
Yes, sir.
What God cares about is what happens to you as a person in light of the judgment seat of Christ. He's not worried at all about whether or not there's a volcano or an earthquake or whether or not He mashes all of the mountains flat and raises up the seas and all that other stuff, because He's going to destroy it anyway. Now come on down, if you will, please, and pick it up, if you will, in verse number 10. "Thou hast fully known," we're talking about Paul's life. He had a public ministry. "Thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity." We just covered that one. We're going to cover the tough one tonight. "Patience, persecutions, afflictions, which came to me at Antioch and at Iconium." Brother Brad, you pray and ask the Lord to help us, would you please?
Heavenly Father, we do thank you, Lord, for this night, Lord. Thank you for another opportunity to come and worship you in your house, Lord. Pray, Lord, now to be with the service, Lord, be with the preacher. Lord, I pray bless the message, Lord. Just use them in a mighty way tonight. Thank you, Lord, for everyone that's able to come tonight. Be with those that can't come tonight. They're at home, sick, or whatever, Lord. Lord, I just thank you, Lord, for all your many blessings. Thank you for what you're doing in this church. Thank you for keeping the doors open. Thank you, Lord, in advance for what you're going to do. Lord, we ask these things in your precious and holy name.
Amen. Thank you. You can be seated. Now, I want you, if you will, please come to Acts chapter 26. One of the things Paul says you know about him was his patience. That patience is not necessarily what you might consider to be patience yourself, like having the ability to be patient waiting on a meal to be cooked, or be patient for the mail to come in, or be patient for the job promotion. But it also has to do with your interaction with other people. The Apostle Paul in that passage right there is talking about his public ministry to other folks. So it's important for you to understand that Paul is not one of these individuals who just talks a good talk, but he also walks a good walk. Paul said, "Thou hast fully known." In other words, I have nothing under the carpet. I've got nothing behind closed doors. I have nothing that I'm trying to keep quiet, or nothing that needs to be kept in a position where nobody knows what I'm doing. He wasn't, and I hate to use this word, a closet Christian. Paul was a Christian that manifested himself not just in words, in other words, not just with his doctrine, but in how he lived. Maybe some of you have known some people that are real good at being a bold witness. I mean, they'll drop a track on somebody right away, or they'll witness to somebody and tell them a plan of salvation, but they have a real bad attitude. You ever known anybody that way? They hide a lot of who they are by, I'm witnessing to somebody, but they can't get along with anybody. That's a strange kind of a mix. It doesn't seem to match up. And they cover or they mask their spirituality by saying, "Well, you know, I passed out 10 tracts this past week." Yeah, but you were mean as a rattlesnake when you did it. The Apostle Paul's trying to get across to you that when it comes to dealing with other people, you have to be patient. Are you hearing me? This is important. This is really important. You have to let God grow people. You can't grow people. One of the most difficult things is learning to work with other people. The passage that comes to my mind is in the epistles there, where the Apostle Paul comes along, in the Gospels, and the Lord's walking through there, and you have two perfect illustrations there. You have a Mary and a Martha. And you have Martha that is always concerned that Mary is not doing what Martha's doing. And that always creates a bone of contention. So when the Lord's there, Mary sits down, she's listening to the Lord, and Martha's saying, "Lord, you should get her up, and you should get her to do this, and you should get her to do that, and she needs to be doing this. She should be out here helping me in the kitchen." And the Lord says, "Martha, Martha, thou art cumbered about with much serving. Mary hath chosen," do you know the rest of it? "The better part." The better part what? Well, when Jesus is there, it's time to sit down, shut up, and listen, not to be busy all the time. One of the things that happens after John chapter 21, when Peter is forgiven there, and 3 times, you love me, Peter, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And then they start walking down the road, and here comes John. And John's walking along there, and the Lord talks about somebody being around till the resurrection. And Peter immediately becomes obsessed with what John's doing after the Lord has just forgiven him of what he's done. And you know what the Lord turns to him and says? What is that to you? What I do with him, what business is it of yours? Now, when it comes to patience with other Christians, sometimes you set the bar a little too high. Sometimes you expect too much too fast. Sometimes you don't know what they may be bringing to the dance with them. You may not know what they're bringing to church with you. You may not know what problems are in their past. You may not know any of their history. And when you're dealing with them, you're getting the off-pouring or the what's the word I'm looking for? You're getting the repercussions of things they've been through. And so you're dealing with them and you're frustrated because they're not getting right with it and doing the things they ought to be doing right how you think they ought to be doing them. And you're frustrated because you're trying to get something done and you don't realize they may be not where you're at. When it comes to being a Christian, I think it's good for you to be in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. I really do. I think it's good for you. Some people say, well, how come so-and-so doesn't come to church? I don't know. Give them time. Have you ever missed church? You ever have a time in your life when you were growing up where you just got out of church altogether? You ever pause and think for a minute how it is you're even here on a Wednesday night? What is it that got you here tonight? Just your main strength and awkwardness because you're so spiritual? I look at myself and I wonder sometimes if I wasn't preaching, would I be in church? I told a young lady this afternoon I'd like to think I would, but I don't know. I mean, I was for a while, but I don't know. I know that right now I am today. That doesn't mean I will be next week. I hope to be. I plan to be. But what I'm trying to get across to you is sometimes you have to be patient with other people because all of us are but a hair's breadth away from getting knocked out of it altogether. I dealt with a long email today along those lines with an individual. I'm done, I'm through, I quit. This Christian did this to me and this person did that to me and the church did this to me and the church didn't do that to me and the pastor didn't do this and the pastor should have done that and this and that. And I mean, by the time they got through with the thing, I thought, well, I guess you ought to just go ahead and get out or get a coffin. I mean, it was terrible the way he was making it out to be, but his opinion of things was skewed. It was all self-centered. Because he lacked the patience of dealing with other people. He didn't realize that other people had to have patience in dealing with him. One of the ways to know you lack patience is you always lose it with other people. One of the ways that you know that you lack patience is you always lose it with other people. You can't give people time to get things right. Look, if you will, please, in Acts chapter number 27. Did I give you that? 24. Let's make it 24, verse 27. The Apostle Paul here, they've been around for quite a while here. Porcius and Festus came to Felix's room after how long? Do you see that in verse 27? After 2 years, Paul's been sitting there. He says, listen, I'll pray for you and I'll be here as long as I possibly can. But Paul's been on hold for 2 years. And after 2 years, Festus came to Felix's room. Felix, willing to show the Jews a pleasure, left Paul bound. For 2 years, Paul's been sitting there. The Apostle Paul in Acts chapter number 27 is sitting over there, and after 2 years of sitting in prison, they finally turn Paul loose and they say to the Apostle Paul, Paul, we're going to let you speak for yourself. You were trained at the feet of Gamaliel. You're an attorney by trade. You're probably a chief of police or something, and so now we're going to let you speak for yourself in defense of yourself. You know how to properly address the court and so on and so forth. What do you think about that? You know what the Apostle Paul said? Paul said, I think myself happy. Now think about that for just a minute. He's been in prison bound for 2 years. That same passage right there, he doesn't have anything. He tells the boys, he said, come before winter. All I have is a coat. He said, bring me a coat and parchments. I don't have anything. I don't have a donkey. I don't have a camel. I don't have any possessions. I have nothing at all. I'm dependent on Rome to take care of me. This is after he's already been shipwrecked. And he said, would you please hurry up and get here because they're fixing to have the trial. After all that, the Apostle Paul comes out and he's been sitting there for 2 years waiting for his day and waiting for his time in court. And he gets out and they say, Paul, what do you think about it? If Paul was a modern Christian today, you know what he'd say? I lost my patience. I've had enough of this. Get me out of here. I tend to lean more toward Jeremiah in the Old Testament. Jeremiah is worn out with the people. He's frustrated with the people. He's preached to the people. He's wept over the people. He's cried over the people. The people keep turning around and mocking him, belittling him, and making fun of him and hurting his feelings. And preachers have feelings, whether you think they do or not. And Jeremiah gets frustrated, and then he gets mad, and then he gets discouraged, and he gets disappointed. And then he keeps preaching and doing what the Lord tells him to do. You know what he gets for it? He winds up in a sewer pit. He's down there in the sewage. It'd be like taking you, well, we don't have that thing back there anymore, but it'd be like taking you to the drain field back there or putting you out here in the lift station, and he's up to his eyeballs in that, in human excrement, human waste. That's what he got for preaching. And you know what he says down there? He says, you know what, I've had enough. I'm not going to preach anymore. And you know what the Lord said? Okay. The Lord said, if you don't want to preach, I'm not going to force you. But now could you blame him? I mean, think about it for just a minute. There was something different about the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul got put in prison, and the Apostle Paul's over there, and the Bible said, and when he prayed and they began to sing, then the Lord came in. But the Apostle Paul's one of those who says in the passage, he said, I've learned in whatsoever state I'm in therewith to be content. Paul had not only a true conversion experience, but Paul wasn't just because he was caught up to the third heaven, but Paul recognized something. Paul recognized, I have already prayed and asked God to do whatever he wants to do with me. Now, I'm trying to get at the heart of patience. Patience is not something that comes natural for anybody. Everybody loses patience. Across the board, everybody has a problem. Nothing moves as quick as you want it to move. The old, what's the guy that always says, the guy that's always on the downside, the other line always moves faster. You're in traffic. I'm going over to Pensacola this past weekend, and I decided to leave on Thursday because of the hurricane, and Brother Josh and Brother Sam are already over there and telling about how bad it was and so on and so forth. So I decided to wait till Thursday morning. I left early Thursday morning, 6 o'clock. It took me a little over 10 hours to get there. I got all the way to Crestview. I got to Defuniak and passed. I got gasoline, and I came out of Defuniak, and I got to Crestview. I hit Crestview. They turned me around 12 miles back to Defuniak, and then down to 90, and then west on 90 for a little ways, and then back up 285. I-10 still closed. Take me all the way down into almost Destin. Turn me back up. Bring me back up 85. Can see I-10 as closest from the road right there. They closed it down right there. Turn me back off. Send me up 85 over to some other road down around, back up 90, over 90 for a ways, come back up, and then finally jump on I-10. And the whole thing is that you're doing this the whole time in traffic. Stop and start, stop and start. And then all of a sudden this lane moves ahead, and you're thinking, well, if I was over there, then you move over there, and then this lane stops. You say, what do I do? Tries your patience. Tries your patience. I was trying to get somewhere. For me, I thought it was important. You know, I was supposed to be first up, and I'm thinking they've already backed it up to 4:30 because of the curfew. And so I'm thinking, man, I'm going to come in on a wing and a prayer. And then the preacher calls, and he says, well, just come straight to the church and just change to the church. And if you don't have time to change, then, you know, just do the best you can. I had enough time to get there and throw on a coat and a tie and then run over there and preach. But here's my point. It's patience. But it's not just patience with yourself, it's patience with other people. You could see the looks on the people's faces because of that thing with the hurricane. We went by a deal in Crestview, and you know those little, what do they call those little huts with the picnic tables underneath them, and tables and chairs and all that, or benches, and then the bathrooms and stuff that were there, water all the way up to the roof. For where the creeks and all overflowed and all the water there. I mean, they had a real problem there. But you could see the stress on the people's faces. You could see them just as tense, just about ready to bite the steering wheel. And that thing's moving that way. Crestview to Pensacola is on an average day is no more than an hour. It took 4. You say, what did it do? Tribulation worketh patience. Because you don't have a choice. But what I'm talking to you tonight about is patience with other Christians. We have new people that come in here sometimes, and you may or may not know this, and a lot of you have been Bible believers for a long time. We have new people that come in here from Southern Baptist churches and charismatic churches. They come in here from all different walks of life. They come in from different things. They've never had a preacher ever raise his voice. let alone talk as fast as I talk, and never had people stand up and shout, and people, stand and wave a Bible, and people cry, and people flooding down to the altar and stuff. They've never experienced anything like that. And they come in here with y'all, and y'all are like, this is ho-hum, the same stuff, and I'm going over stuff y'all know backwards, forward, sideways, and upside down, and you're taking a snooze fest, and they're sitting there thinking, I can't even keep up with all this stuff that's going, and you know what happened? You're thinking they ought to be further along. You got to be patient.
Amen. Amen.
You got to be patient. They don't know all the stuff. I know, I've learned the new Bible believing trick. You've replaced your tabs now in your Bibles. You don't have to have tabs anymore. You know how to find the Bible without it. But a lot of you got little Braille beads on the edges of your Bible so you can find it without nobody thinks you're able to read Braille. But some of you still have to, look in there every now and then. Like if I tell you to find Nahum, I can see you running it through. I see, okay, that's Old Testament. Nahum, Habakkuk, okay. And then where's Habakkuk? Here's my point I'm going to try to show you tonight. You have to learn to be patient with people. You have to realize you can't get them. This is the spiritual life, the spiritual walk is not something that you can generate. It's about accuracy. It's not speed. You can't force it. You have to let them grow up. Look, if you will, in Philippians chapter number 1. Are you there? Philippians 1. Look all the way down to verse number 13. Patience is being able to wait on God while He completes whatever task He desires to complete. That's worth writing down. Being able to wait on God. Daniel prayed. I got some messages on prayer I'm working on right now. Daniel prayed 21 days. He never gave up. I gave you a message not long ago talking about that thing called importunity. Importunity means you just keep on knocking until you get an answer. That guy I told you about in that illustration that I gave you about that guy said, well, preacher, Paul only prayed 3 times. Yeah, but Paul got an answer at the 3rd time. Paul's answer was, no, I'm not taking the thorn away. My grace is sufficient for you. For when you're weak, I'm strong. My grace is sufficient for you. He got an answer. That's why he quit praying about it. If you already know and God's already given you an answer, that's not when you're talking about importunity. But sometimes God wants to know whether or not you're interested enough to keep praying about it. Does it bother you enough? You got a prodigal in your family? Don't ever quit praying for that prodigal. You say, well, God's not going to move His will against that kid's will or whatever it might. No, but you keep getting him to give him an opportunity. There's a passage in 1 John 5 that has to do with the tribulation. But he says, if you see a man commit a sin unto death, that's not unto death, pray for him. You have not because you ask not. What are you saying? Pray for him. You say, what? The Lord will extend his life before He knocks his full head off. You have somebody in your family, ask God to be merciful to them. Don't, God drop the hammer on them and I know, well, now hang on a minute, man. Suppose He puts them in a wheelchair but nothing but their eyeballs moving. Don't be God when it comes to that stuff. The Apostle Paul on a couple of occasions pray that somebody be turned over to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, but that's the Apostle Paul praying. I wouldn't pray that if I was you. What if somebody prayed that on you? I mean, what's to say you might not, get out there one day and kind of be messing around and messing up? I don't know. God's been pretty gracious with me. Amen. In other words, be patient. Err on the side of patience with people. Learn to be kind. Learn to slow down a little bit. Learn to just listen. Give them some time. You don't know where they're at. I don't think you can use at the end of a sentence, but in the South we use it all the time. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what's going on in their... So what do you have to do? Be patient with them. Be patient with your kids. Do whatever you have to do to correct them and stuff, and then recognize they won't really know what they are until they're about 40. Amen. And where were you at 18? I don't want to know. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And you're looking where you are right now. You know what you ought to be thinking right now? What am I doing here? You say what? The Lord is patient and long-suffering and merciful. So if He's been that way to you, be that way with other people. There's nothing that we're doing that has to be done right away. And let me just say this, and I'll come to this in just a second here, but this is where I was headed a minute ago and I lost my train of thought. Especially when it comes to winning a soul. You're not winning anybody. Your job is to simply tell them about Jesus, but it's not high-pressure sales where you can notch your belt. You might be like my dad. He worked for 9 years on 4 guys. 9 years. Now, that wasn't the only 4 he worked on. 9 years being a good witness and talking to those boys that were stock car racers and stuff and mechanics and worked hard for a living and turned wrenches for a living. 9 years, all 4 of them boys finally got saved after 9 years. Just a steady witness, just to tell them about the Lord, invite them to a Christmas deal and ask them to come around for so-and-so, take them a Christmas card. Just be a steady witness to them and go through some trouble with them and go through some problems with them, and then them sit down, and every one of them different time. Them 2 farm boys up there in Alabama, Bruton, Alabama, same way. Just visit them and talk to them and visit them and talk to them and visit them. Grady Wheelbanks up there in Georgia, just visit them, talk to them, visit them, talk to them, visit them, talk to them. And then one day the Lord opens the door, and the Lord's the one that saves them. To be patient. Don't be in a hurry. It's not Jehovah's Witness. He's not trying to get them to the watchtower right off the bat. It's plant the seed. Amen. You ever planted a seed? You ever done that even if it was back in elementary school? Did y'all have to do that when you were in elementary? Do y'all still do that? You plant a seed? Y'all probably don't even do that anymore. But anyway, we used to plant little seeds. You plant them on a sponge, and then after they root, then you put them in the ground, and then you go look at them every day. And then during the class, you're looking at them, and it's just dirt. Dirt. Well, I planted a seed in there. It had a little root on it. Yeah, but that thing, the roots go down before the sprout comes up. Yep. Did you get that? The roots go down before the sprout comes up. And so then all of a sudden you come in from the morning time and you always go by on the window ledge over there, and then here's a little bean sprout sticking up there overnight. You say, what happened? Well, it didn't sprout overnight. It's been sprouting since you put it in the ground. But you have to be patient. You understand? You got to be patient. Give people some breathing room. Notice this, Philippians chapter number 1, verse number 13. Yes, I am going to get to it. Paul says this, so that my bonds in Christ are manifest in all palace and in all other places. And many of the brethren of the Lord, waxing confident by my bonds, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. The one preached Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. What then? Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, I therein do rejoice. Yea, I will rejoice, for I know that this shall turn to my salvation through your prayer and supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. You know what Paul's saying? I'm sitting here in prison, but it's a benefit to the ministry, so I'm just going to stay in bonds until the Lord sees fit to let me out. Can you stay right where you are until God sees fit to let you out? That's a lot to ask. Come to Matthew chapter number 18. Matthew chapter 18. I tell you what, stop off at Romans 5 on the way. We're going back toward the Genesis. Suffering, afflictions, pain, toil, calamity, provocation, or other evils will calm that ruffled up temper. Enduring without murmuring and fretfulness. Christian submission to God's divine will. That's tough, isn't it? Maybe not. Y'all got it all down pat. I remember the old preacher, Romans chapter number 5. I'm reminded of the old preacher who used to go in and see a lady in the nursing home, kind of an assisted living place. And the lady's name was Mrs. Salter. And I just remembered, I never knew her. I just remember he used the illustration a lot because it touched his heart. And he would walk in there, and in those days, because Mrs. Salter had bed sores on her, he said that she was just skin and bones laying there and had been laying there for over 20 years. In a home, having to have her garments changed and things like that, and have to be taken care of in every manner you can imagine, and being fed and all that. And he would go in and say, hey, Mrs. Salter, she's laying there in Vaseline. And say, hey, Mrs. Salter, how are you doing? I'm fine, Brother Preet, I'm doing fine. Let me hear you say, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, preacher. Laying in a nursing home for 20 years flat on your back. So you're just trying to guilt trip me. No, I'm trying to say that takes some real patience. Wouldn't you rather die? I would. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know if I could handle that. Amen. I mean, you talk about a glorified saint in my eyes to be laying there, never go out to a restaurant, let alone have to wear a mask to get in the door. I mean, can't go out, can't get in traffic to get mad at somebody for cutting in front of you or whatever. Would be glad to swap places with you in a heartbeat for all the trouble we have. and lay there and come in. And what he said about her, he said, the thing that was amazing to me is that she had more joy laying there in that bed for those years than most Christians who have free course to do whatever they want to do. It puts me under conviction. Yep. It really does. Puts me under conviction. I think, man, you got to be kidding. Let alone the people up in back there, the Waldensians and the people that came through that are your heritage. If you should take church history. Would you ever take church history and you find out the martyrs and stuff? They'd line them up there on the side of a cliff there, and they tell the lady, she's got 4 little kids here. They've already killed her husband. You deny Jesus Christ? Nope. Knock the first one off the cliff. You deny Jesus Christ? Nope. Knock the second one off the cliff. Head bangs out on the rocks and burst his brains all over the place. She's holding on to her little baby and stuff. Come all the way down. I'm not going to deny him. I'm not going to deny him. Take the baby, rip her out of his arm. Kick him off and throw him away there also. Deny Christ, no. And then finally at the end, kick her off. That's your heritage. That's where you came from, killed by the Roman Catholics. That's a matter of fact. Don't take it, turn it into a hate speech. That's a matter of fact. That's historical fact. You say, what do you think about that? Well, boy, I need to work on the patience. Are you in Romans 5 there? Do you see around verse number 3? I think it's 3. Is that the one that says tribulation? Is that it? Tribulation worketh. So does the Lord use tribulation in our lives? Now come, if you will, to Matthew 18. Does he use tribulation in our lives to work patient? Yes, he does. Now, let me say this, and I'm not being funny when I say it. Okay, so don't laugh because I'm trying to make an illustration. Are you married? If you're married, you know what happens? A lot of times you have trouble in your marriage. You know what you have to learn? You have to learn to be patient with each other. You say, why? Because, sir, you're a jerk sometimes. You're a self-absorbed, full of yourself, arrogant, obnoxious, Bible-believing jerk. Sometimes. And she's got to be patient with you. Now, you may not cuss and throw things and act the fool, but you pout like a little boy sometimes when you don't get your way, or you run over her, or you just talk over her, and you just got to show her, who's the boss and that kind of thing. And ma'am, God bless your heart, you can be Jezebel and reincarnated sometimes. And sir, you know what you have to learn? You have to learn that she has bad days too. And sometimes she's human. I mean, consider this. She's been putting up with you. Now, you may not grab a hold of that, but I think sometimes to myself, would I live with me for 40 years? I'd kick my ringtail out the high. I mean, I'm trying to get the right thing here. But there's patience. You have to learn to be patient. You say, why? They're not always what you think they were when you walk down the aisle. You get married and you find out who they really are. Any of you ever have real good, real close friends? Boy, you better be patient. You say, why? Sometimes they don't act like a friend ought to act. You better give them a little room. You won't have friends very long. Some of you don't have many friends. Do you ever look at the common denominator? You don't have many friends. What's the common denominator? Maybe it's you. He that hath friends must show himself friendly. Well, I don't need friends. Oh, okay. What makes you think anybody wants to be your friend with that attitude? You need to learn some things about patience. I'm not trying to be hard on you. I'm just asking you to consider a couple things. Look in Matthew chapter number 18. Come all the way down to verse number 26. Now, you know what happens here. He's making a comparison, and he's taking accounts of his servants and talking about how much individuals owe him. This first guy owes him somewhere in the tune of about $3 million. Verse 25, for as much as he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, his wife and children and all that he had in payment. The servant, verse 26, therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, I will pay thee all. Now, the great thing about that story right there is that he said, I'll pay thee all, and the guy has mercy on him and gives him patience. And you know what the guy does? He goes out and chokes the lights out of a guy that owes him the equivalent of a penny. After he's been shown that much mercy, and the boss has had that much patience with him, then he goes out and demands payment, or he's going to do exactly what the king was going to do. Just something for you to consider. Are you as patient with others as God's been with you? Come to James 5. James 5. I know it's not a real shouter-outer. Paul said, you've known my patience. You ever read through 2 Corinthians chapter number 11? I'm going to use it a little bit, hopefully, Lord willing, at the Jubilee that's coming up, and I hope you'll come to that. I think it'll be a real blessing for you. Come to James chapter number 5. But you get to thinking about the ministry. The Apostle Paul comes, he says, a day and a night in the deep, I've been shipwrecked, I've been beaten 5 times, 40 stripes save one, the care of the brethren, care of tribulation and hungerings and fastings often, and nakedness and perils of robbers and perils of my own countrymen and perils of this. And you know what he says right at the very end? And on top of all that, you know what he says? The care of all the churches. Paul said one thing that wears me out as much as all of the other stuff I'm getting is taking care of the churches. And if you start looking at the letters he wrote to the churches have people in them. So therefore they got problems in them. And you have to learn to be patient with people. It'll make things so much better for you. Don't be in such a hurry to boot them out. You'd be surprised. Some people might turn around. You did. James chapter number 5, look in verse number 7. James 5, verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto what? The coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Establish just means to solidify it, to make it like a foundation. Come to verse number, well, just keep reading there. Verse 10, take my brethren the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering, affliction, and of what? Look at verse 11. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and tender mercy. Now, he's given you an idea. He's given you the concept that part of patience is tribulation works patience. And he says, you've heard about that. Well, Job is an illustration here. Take your Bible, come to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thessalonians 5. Job is the picture of that. The Lord comes up there to the devil and he says, here's Job. Hast thou considered Job, a righteous man escheweth evil? And he draws the devil's attention to him. It's not Job looking for attention. And the devil's not looking at Job. God brings Job and puts him in the crosshairs. And Job says, well, yeah, he's that way because you got a hedge of protection around him. I mean, you let me take what I want to take. I guarantee you he'll curse you. And the Lord said, you can touch him, just can't touch his life. So he kills all of his all of his friends. He kills all of his family. He takes his fitness away from him. He takes his finances away from him. And then he has his wife turn against him. Here's the thing strange about Job. Job comes along there and she tells him, you know, why don't you just curse God and die? Because that's what they believed would happen. And he said, you speak as a foolish woman. And he said, we have received good at the hand of God. Shall we not also receive evil? Meaning, I've gotten all the good. You think I'm going to turn my back on him now that bad things are happening? No, I'm not a modern day Christian. I'm not turning my back on God just because things aren't going my way and I got all the chocolate off my peanuts or somebody licked my lollipop. No, I got good all this time and now evil comes. Naked I came into the world, naked I shall leave. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen. That's Paul. I mean, that's Job. And then Job gets into it a little bit there with the Lord and says, I'm not really afraid of him. I just want to talk to him. And the Lord said, okay, get up and get dressed. You heard me talk about this the other day. And come stand before me. Let's hear what you got to say. But before you ask me a question, I want to ask you a question. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the world, when the morning stars sang and shouted for joy and so on and so forth? And if you can answer that, then I'll answer your questions. You know what the Bible says? In all this, Job did not charge God foolishly. He comes up at the end of that thing. You get toward the end of the passage, it'll be 38, 39, somewhere right in there. And the Lord comes down there and He's talking to Job again, and He's already talked about Behemoth, and He's talked in Job 41 about the Satan there following his likeness and the hoary path shining after him and all that other stuff that's there, and king over the children of pride. And you know what He said to Job? He said, I'm not listening to your friends anymore. But He said, I'm going to keep you in captivity until you pray for your friends. Kind of a loose term there, Lord. You call them my friends, but they've been hammering me since about chapter 3. They've been blaming this whole thing on me. And the Lord said, yeah, I understand that, but you pray for them. And the Lord released the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. The key that unlocked Job's oppression was he had to pray for the people that were accusing him of being the reason that the stuff was happening. That takes some real patience. Don't you think? You've heard of the patience of Job. It wasn't just the patience in the suffering, the patience in the loss of everything. It was putting up with people blaming him for the mess he was in. Could you take a good long look at yourself for a moment tonight, with all due respect? Could you think for just a minute that in all your well-meaning that maybe you might have other people that are like Job thinking, I don't know how you could be blaming me for all this. I'm doing the best I can. I didn't do nothing wrong. How would it be for you if the Lord said, well, I'm not going to listen to you anymore, but the one that you're hammering all the time, I won't turn you loose until he prays for you. That's what he told him. I'm not listening to you. I'm going to listen to Job. You mean the one we're hammering, Lord? Yeah, the one you don't like. Bless them that persecute you, bless and curse not. That's tough, ain't it? I think it is. I think it's pretty rough. 1 Thessalonians chapter number 5. Is it making any sense to you at all? Aren't you glad you came to church tonight? I am. Verse 14. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak. Well, I'll be jumped. I found a verse of Scripture that ties in with just what I've been saying. What does he say? Be patient toward, don't forget the little word there. There's a little conjunction in there. Luke 17, he says it impossible that offenses will come. Woe unto them for who they come. Better for him that a millstone be hung about his neck and cast into the sea than to offend one of these little ones. And if he comes to you and asks you to forgive him, then forgive him. And Pete says, Lord, increase our faith. And then he turns and says, how many times should we forgive him? 7 times? And the Lord says, until 70 times 7. That takes a lot of patience. They keep messing up. The Lord said, yeah, forgive them. I don't know about you. I'm just being honest with you about me. I have to do it every day. I make it a habit. I make it a habit when I put my head on the pillow at night. I don't care how tired I am. And if I wake up, if I've forgotten to do it, to go to the bathroom or something, I'll think a second and go, I forgot to say something, Lord. Now, this is what I do. I'm not the poster child for what being spiritual is. This is what I do. I'm petrified of dying when I sleep with unconfessed sin on me. Not because I'm going to go to hell. Not worried about going to hell at all. I don't even think about going to hell. I ain't worried about burning in a devil's hell, and I'm not really sure of my salvation, and I'm positive of my salvation. I'm sure, the Lord's sure, and the devil probably knows it too. But other than that, you don't know if I am or not. But I'm saved. I know I'm saved. What I worry about is getting up there and the Lord say, well, it's time for you to give an account, but you didn't square that thing away, and you're not going to be back in fellowship with me until me and you talk. That's why he put such an emphasis on 1 John 1:9. And he'll say to you, well, did you confess that? Well, no. Well, it ain't under the blood then. It is judicially. Part of the terror of the Lord up there, I'm pretty sure, is going to be the Lord say, we're going to talk about some things you refuse to talk about down there. We're going to talk about it here. Sure as I'm standing here. Part of what's going to go on when you get up there, you didn't get something straightened out down here and you didn't make an attempt to. The Lord's going to stop everything up there and bring you both up there and say, okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it. In front of everybody. So what I try to do at night, this is just for me. It's just a habit. It's a, maybe I think it's a good habit for me. I lay my head down and I close my eyes. I don't think this stupid stuff. Lord, and forgive me of the sin that I committed, that I didn't even know I committed, because I'm sure I committed some sin that was grievous to you, but I don't pray that. I have to worry about the ones I do know. And what I do is I look back in the day, in that daytime, and that time, and I say, Lord, right there, you forgive me of that, please, and put that under the blood. I was wrong. And I try to do that every night. I don't make a now I lay me down to sleep and pray the Lord soul to keep prayer. I know my soul's safe. But I do that. Sometimes I go to sleep pretty fast after that, but sometimes I think about that stuff and I think, my goodness, man, after all these years, I've been saved nearly 60 years now. After all these years, you'd think I'd be able to stop now. It seems like the list gets longer. And maybe you're not that way. Maybe you're like, well, I go a week or more, preacher. I never sin. Praise the Lord. Here's the pulpit. You sit out at the dinner table and never even think twice and just eat without thanking God for it, or overeat, or undereat. Let's move on quickly. 1 Timothy chapter number 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3. This is just trying to give you something practical. It's something to give you to work on. Right when you think you've arrived at the pinnacle of the temple. One of the gravest dangers that we ever had. Y'all excuse me, I got cotton mouth. I must not have drank enough water today. Thank you, excuse me. One of the gravest things that ever happened to Christianity was when we came away from the ultra-liberal Southern Baptist and you went to the opposite extreme, and that was to get very, very legalistic. And then what happened is that Christians were taught that as long as I got on a coat and a tie, as long as my hair is the right length, and as long as my dress is the right length, and to my neck and down to my elbows or whatever, all the not too tight and not too, whatever, as long as you did that, then you're a good Christian. If you tithe and you read your Bible and you say that you pray and you witness, go to visitation or whatever, then you're a good Christian. They never dealt with this stuff. They never dealt with how you interact with other people. I'm doing good, man. Why? I don't smoke, drink, cuss, or chew. Go with them that do. I just talk about everybody that goes to the movies because I want to go and I don't go. So then you got the big old beta VHS things that came out, and then you would go buy the red box thing and you'd go to the same movie, you just watch it at home. Come on, be honest. Not really, yeah, okay, whatever. And now you click a button or something, or you move a rat around and the thing's on your phone or it's on the computer, or now they run it through your box somehow or another or whatever, and you can stop it and start it and get it later or whatever you want to do and commercial free it or however they do all that kind of stuff and all that. I don't know, but it's interesting. There was never this concept of how are you doing with your bitterness? How are you doing with your anger, your slander? How are you doing in dealing with people? How hospitable are you? How kind are you? How patient are you? How loving and caring are you? Do you have the ability to sit down and let people talk? Or you just, you got to be the bride at the wedding and the corpse at the funeral. You just suck all the air out of the room when you walk in? You got to be in charge. You got to be the boss. You got to tell everybody what you did. I call them one-uppers. You ever been around them? Man, we just got back from Hawaii. Yeah, I've been to Hawaii 4 times. Did you go on that glass bottom boat? You get to see over there where the Pearl Harbor took place. They actually took me down there in a diving bell. I went down there and saw that thing. Saw the bubbles still coming up out of the floor of that thing. But they asked me to sign off on it. Okay. Volcano blowed up while we was there. Yeah, I walked right up there next to that lava. Did you go on one of them lava things? We rode the helicopter. Got so close it melted the skids on the helicopter. Did y'all see that? Oh, y'all didn't go to there. You ever been around one-uppers? A fellow said to me, he said, preacher, he said, I'm not coming to church. I don't want to, give anybody anything. I might be a carrier. I didn't say this, but I wanted to say it. I didn't. But I wanted to say, well, you never were worried about your lying hurting anybody. You never were worried about your unfaithfulness hurting anybody. You never were worried about them catching the disease of slander or unkindness. You worried about somebody catching a disease. Why weren't you worried about passing on a personality trait? I didn't say it to him, but I did want to. I'm sure he's not listening tonight. He's probably doing something of grave importance. 1 Timothy chapter number 3. But there's always the chance. You might have heard that. He's talking about me. No, not you. Verse number 3, the Bible says, this is talking about a bishop now. He says, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre, but what? That's what I'm supposed to be. You desire the office of a bishop. Are you patient? You better learn to be patient. People don't move fast as you. Sitting one day, I was over on the old preacher's house on Chisholm Lane. We're sitting there on the bench. He was working out a little bit there with some weights. We're sitting there side by side like this. And he's looking into the floor and counting the carpet weave or whatever. I hate telling you this stuff, but I have to. And he's looking at the carpet weave and he says, you better slow down a little bit, bud. I said, sir? He said, you're not training rookies to go out on the street anymore. You're training sheep. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, you keep moving the bar up. He said, you're not training SWAT guys or special forces. He said, you better learn to let them grow slow. Or all you'll do is train a bunch of killers and they'll kill each other and then they'll kill you. He said, you better slow down. You better learn to be patient. They don't grow as fast as you grow. How'd you like to have that put on you by your mentor, who you respect? And he says, you better slow down, boys. Custer came out. You've heard me use the illustration before. He had a bunch of raw, rough recruits that were out there, and they got ready to go to Little Bighorn, and they saddled up the horses, and he didn't understand, because when they all took off at a gallop, there's two things that were unusual about it. Number one is, when they rode by Custer, Custer said, hang on there, boys, there's enough Indians for everybody, meaning there'll be plenty of killing once you get there. He didn't recognize that they were unskilled cavalrymen. The horses were running away with them. He didn't understand that. And number two, they were in such a big hurry, they left both the Gatling guns behind. Because they didn't need them. Because just a bunch of Indians. A bunch of savages. A bunch of people with bows and arrows and knives. A bunch of them lost their scalp that day. Yellow Hair being one of them. You say, why? Too big a hurry. People ask all the time, what about? What are we going to do? What about? I plan on being here until the Lord takes me by death or rapture, or if I lose my mind, y'all need to boot me out, or whatever. But the bottom line is, I plan on being here for the long haul. You can't be here for the long haul if you're sprinting all the time. Steady, consistency. Faith seems to be in that Bible. Faithfulness seems to be in the Bible something God rewards greatly. It just seems to really grab His attention of all the attributes. The Lord just seems to like, well, I can always count on that guy. Mary, she's always right there. If I walk in the room, it ain't going to be long. She's going to be at my feet. He seems to like that. Seems to pay attention to it. So one of the things that happens is faithfulness is not something that happens at the blink of an eye. It's not something that happens just like that. Faith is something that's only proven out over time. Just being here all the time. 40, 50, 60 years. That old preacher, I realize, I know what I'm talking about. 65 years in the ministry. 65 years. Longer in the ministry than I've been alive. Right on the cusp. How do you do that? You don't get in too big a hurry. You just steady. A couple of boys out plowing one time, and they thought they'd get in a big hurry, and they grabbed the mule and took the mule out there, and they started going back and forth and plowing, and the dad came out there to look at the boys, and he recognized the field got turned out pretty quick, and then next thing you know, it came time for them boys to get on that mule and come back to the house, and that mule just standing there. twitching, shaking, just twitching. And the daddy came out there. It's getting evening time now. The sun dipping back over the horizon. And Daddy comes walking down that long pathway there. And he gets out there to the main part of the road and turns. And he sees the boy over there. And one of the boys is hitting that mule with his teeth gritted and smacking that mule. And then Daddy looks at that field out there. And then he looks over there and he said, "You better not hit that mule one more time, boy. I'm going to turn it on you." And he said, "Well, Daddy, he won't take us back where he's supposed to go." He said, "You plowed him too hard and too fast. He doesn't have enough to get back to the house." He said, "All y'all wanted to do was hurry and get done so you could get back and go to the swimming hole." He said, "You have to put that mule under the shade tree and give him a break, or he won't have enough gas to get back to the house." Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, faster, 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 faster. And then you need to get back to the house, and that mule says, "I ain't got nothing left. I can't do no more." Shot out. Christians can be that way. Try to get them into Bible school too fast. Try to get them into the ministry too fast. Try to get them out to a door too fast. Try to get them on the street too fast. Try to give it, just be patient. Just be faithful. Just give it time. You got time, don't you? Don't you have time? Can't you be patient? Cool and calm and collected? We're talking about patience. Ain't it a great thing? No wonder people don't like to talk about patience. You say, why? Because it takes a long time, especially if I'm preaching on it. 2 Timothy chapter number 2. Make it 1 Timothy 6. Let me stop off there. Yeah, 1 Timothy 6, look at verse 11. "But thou, O man of God, flee these things. Follow after righteousness." That's a good thing, would you agree? Yes. Godliness. That a good thing? And look, if I'm supposed to be, quote, the man of God, I'm just saying, if I am, right? We're just making a hypothetical, right? Would you agree? I should flee the things that are up there in verses 9 and 10. But then he says, follow after. Would you agree I should follow after what's right? Would you agree I should follow after God? How about faith? I should exercise faith, shouldn't I? Love, shouldn't I love? You, my wife, the things God tells me to love. Uh-oh, look what's in there. Well, that's supposed to be one of the prerequisites. Whoever preaches on that, let alone meekness, all meekness is not being mousy. Meekness just simply means you're still teachable. You never stop being teachable. Everybody is an instructor, and everybody should be a student. But you know what he said? He said, "Thou, O man of God, follow righteousness and follow godliness and learn something about patience." Now come over to 2 Timothy chapter number 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2. I'll try to get through this tonight. We only got about 5 minutes. I'm trying to do better on my time. I don't know exactly what that means, but I am going to try. 2 Timothy chapter number 2. It's an amazing thing to me, but when I feel like I have something to say. I mean, the guns are loaded and I want to shoot all the ammunition. Just the old preacher would say, "Yeah, but you don't have to shoot it all at one time." But I figure if I empty the thing, then I got to go back and fill it back up. So I give you the whole bucket full, and then it's empty. I got to go fill it up again. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse number 23. "Foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. The servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach." You say, what is the context? The context is everybody doesn't grab blood-sucking angels right off the bat. They don't grab things in Genesis 1 and Genesis 6. And they don't grab the things about the rightly dividing the word of truth. And they don't understand the millennial kingdom and the judgment of nations. And they don't understand the judgment seat of Christ and all that. Be patient. Takes time for them to learn. A lot of them didn't grow up in that. They don't understand that. It takes time. You got to learn to be patient with them. Give them some time to grab a hold of it. 2 Corinthians chapter number 6. 2 Corinthians 6. I could have probably saved a number of years on my life, both what I used to do and what I do now, if I had learned that a long time ago. I pushed a little too hard in some of my assignments. expecting things to be done at a quicker pace than it was possible to have them to be done. That's a horrible confession to make, but it's that way. And even though that's a paramilitary organization, still have to have an understanding that people are human, and unless it's something that's life or death, you can push a little too hard, too much, too quick. I've done it in the ministry. I know you've never done that. I've done it sometimes with my wife. Second Corinthians chapter number 6. Now y'all know that I'm whacked out. Make it verse 3. Giving no offense in anything, the ministry be not blamed. Let's read that again. Remember when Paul said, "You fully known my doctrine and manner of life, giving no offense in anything, that the ministry be not blamed." Preach on that a while. But in all things, approving ourselves as ministers of God, in much what? Look what comes with patience: afflictions, necessities, distresses, stripes, imprisonments, tumults, labors, and watchings, fastings, pureness by knowledge, long-suffering, by kindness, by the Holy Ghost, by love unfeigned. Look what's in there with patience. That's a mouthful, isn't it? You say, what's patience? It's not just you being able to be patient while God gets through. It's you being patient while God gets through working on somebody else. He may be slowing down because you're the one he's working on. You think he's working on them, but he's just finding out whether or not you can wait on him. You ever think how many times, maybe you've never done this, I should probably clarify that. 2 Corinthians 12, you ever think about this? How many times you've expected God to do something on your time clock? You pray and ask God to fix somebody, and God don't fix them. You're like, hey, I said fix it. I know what they need. And the Lord's like, I know what you need, sonny boy. And I'm not going to jump and fix them even if they are wrong. I'm going to work on you. Why are you so interested in what's wrong with them anyway? What makes you think I didn't rub them up against you to show you where the problem is? Sometimes people are like a sanding block. What grit's that? You guys that are carpenters in here, Brother Robert, what's the heavy grain grit? Is that number 12 or something? Or 80 grit? Okay, 80 grit. What's that, Roger? 60, 80, that's rough grit? Okay, all right. So it's real sandy, right? People are like sanding blocks. And sometimes they put somebody that's got a real rough grain. You know what happens? You just keep. You ever wonder why you keep running into them? You say, yeah, they're messed up as a soup sandwich. They just shut up and listen to me. And there they are again, and there they are again, and there they are again. And they keep irritating you, and you think they're the problem. And the Lord's like, shh, 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 shh. It ain't rubbing them raw, it's rubbing you raw. They're the sandpaper. God's knocking some edges off of you. You're down here looking, you're saying, man, you got a little speck in your eye. And every time you try to get the speck out of his eye, you're knocking him in the head with a telephone pole. And wiping out every time you turn your head, and plop, 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 you're hitting everybody along the way. And you're looking at that little minuscule little dot of dust in there. I'm trying to help you tonight now. I'm trying to tell you the reason some people irritate you is because they're sandpaper. God put them in your life for a reason, to show you something about you. They're not the problem. I don't want to be sandpaper in somebody else's life, but I'm beginning to learn that a lot of times when individuals come into my life that irritate me, sometimes it's because God's saying, I need to teach you a lesson, boy. You got a problem. You need to be smoothed out a little bit. Boy, this is really going well tonight. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, look at verse number 12. The Bible says this, and where is it at? There it is. Truly the signs of an apostle are wrought among you, right? Hocus pocus dominocus, raising people from the dead and, casting out evil spirits and speaking in tongues and doing all that stuff. Look at the signs of an apostle are wrought in you in what? Guess what comes before signs, wonders, and mighty deeds? When have you ever gone to the first church of the apostolic signs and ever heard them say, One of the signs of the apostles is patience. Two more and we'll go. The aged men are supposed to have, well, just go there. Titus chapter number 2. Titus. As you grow in patience with others, should grow also. If you're growing in the Lord, your patience should grow also. You ought to be more tolerant. I'm not talking about tolerating sin. I'm not saying don't hold people accountable. That's not at all what I'm saying. You ought to be more patient. Just keep coming. Encourage them to come. Maybe one day they'll be on that pinnacle where you are. Rise to where you are above everybody else. Titus chapter number 2, the Bible says this, verse number 2, the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in the faith, and charity, and what? You've been saved a while? Charity we covered last week. You know what he says? You're also supposed to be patient. You ought to be the bastion of patience. When people come around, then you ought to be able to just be patient with them. Calm, cool, and collected under fire. There was a guy, and I couldn't remember his name, and I looked for it, and I couldn't find it. There was a guy, come to Hebrews 12. This will be the last one. We got to go. It's after 8 o'clock. You're going to turn into a pumpkin. You can't turn into a pumpkin now. It's too close to Halloween. Everybody will think you're a jack-o'-lantern instead of a pumpkin. So we got to turn into something else right now. I can't remember that guy. I want to say he was a Marine. He probably was. It wasn't Chesty Puller. Anyway, I can't remember. But his whole the patrol group there, the battalion, I don't think it was a full battalion, but anyway, they were under fire and stuff, and they were all recruits and all that kind of deal. And one of the things they said about this guy is that the bullets were flying and things were, hopping all around, and the comms had all gone down, and everybody was, every man for himself kind of a deal. And they said about this guy who was the sergeant, I remember that part of it, but I can't remember what in York. It wasn't the guy that squawked like a turkey and brought a battalion. I can't remember that guy's name. But what was said about him was not all the heroic acts that he did and all the people that he killed and all the other kind of stuff, was the patience that he showed to the new guys in country in Vietnam, that when they were under fire and they were acting crazy and they were scared and doing everything but wetting their pants, how calm, cool, and collected he was at handling their situation. And they said he treated us like a father. And some of them died. They didn't make it out. But that guy, all he did is try to just, by being patient with them. They didn't get it right this time. They'll get it right next time. They messed up this time. They'll get it right next time. And that's what was said about him. Not all the heroic deeds. The thing the guys remembered about him is that when I first came over here, he's the one that kept me alive, because instead of panicking and screaming at me and yelling at me like I was still a boot and training, he was just like this. Grab their weapon, clear their weapon out, put it back in there. They knew back during the time of the Civil War, they found a number of muskets that would wind up having sometimes as many as 6 loads in the muzzle of that thing, because under pressure they got scared and they just kept jamming musket balls in there, and then they get killed and there's 7 rounds in there because they're just scared, and somebody screaming at them not going to help them. Then fire the one you got, or the thing's going to blow up in your face, and then unload and reload. But if you've never been under that kind of pressure before, screaming at somebody in a time like that, it don't help matters. It makes it worse. They're already scared to death. That's why they're melting down. You know why some Christians get out? I'm sad to say this. It's because we push them too hard and too fast. They feel like they have to hurry up and do something. Just hurry up and sit on the pew and learn the Bible. Just what do I need to do? Come, sit, listen. Rinse, wash, repeat. But what about? Oh, there's plenty of people to do the what abouts. Just come, sit, learn. Last one, Romans chapter 12. We'll cover the rest of this on Sunday. Won't that be exciting? Because you know what comes right after patience? Another P, persecution. So Paul says you got to have the patience. You say, why? Because yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. So you have to learn to be patient. All right, Hebrews chapter number 12. Look, if you will, verse number 1. Wherefore, seeing we're also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with speed. Maybe you have, but have you ever seen how many times patience is used in the Bible? Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. He never says anything about speed. Paul said, I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Right? Never about speed. It's about finishing. It's about just getting there. In your mind, you should be a tortoise, not a hare. You should be a turtle, not a rabbit. You say, why? Just slow and steady wins the race. Let's stand together and be dismissed. I hope that helps you. Learn to be patient with people, especially in the time right now. People under stress right now. Did you know that? They're worried about a virus jumping on them. They're worried about, different groups jumping on them, about getting pulled into something. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about who's going to win what and who's going to do what. And now I think there's a hoopla over whether or not somebody's going to get anointed. Wow. Anointed. Wow. Appointed to the Supreme Court. Okay. And between now and then, you might die. So then you hit the judgment seat. And the first question when you get there is, who'd you vote for? No, it won't be that. Be patient with each other, folks. Just be patient. Brother Sam, dismiss us if you would, please. Good to see you and your family here tonight. I appreciate it. Sophie, I'm glad you're doing better. Good to see you.